and welcome to another episode of Building Your Business with the CCPIA, the Certified Commercial Property Inspectors Association. I am so tickled today because I've got two of my newest best friends that I have met in this industry. I have Mark Wahl and Bob Hintze from Bob Hintze. Inside joke. We were laughing about names. I've got Bob Hintze and Mark Wahl from Waypoint Property Inspections, located in Florida, but not really Florida per se. I'm going to let you guys introduce yourselves, Bob and Mark, and tell us exactly where you're located.
Okay. Well, it's good to be tickled. Um,
Midwest.
Bob Hintze, we're actually located, our office is located on the west coast of Florida, in the Tampa area, and we service the greater Tampa, Orlando, way up north, way down south. So that's where our office is located. Mark?
Thank you, Bob. And our office is actually down in Palm Beach County, in central Palm Beach and Boynton Beach. So we're servicing pretty much from Vero Beach down to the Keys.
So
while they're wide and long, we're just very long and narrow. We have this funny lake in the middle.
I'm a little bit more wide than long, so that's because I've got that Midwest sensibility of I eat too much Italian beef. So now that we know where you're located, I want to hear from both of you because this is a building your business episode, and it's not really a this is your life episode, but it kind of is because you both came to the inspection industry through a different paths, different journeys. And I want to hear from each of you, what was your journey into property inspections?
Okay, I guess I'll jump off the deep end. My path into home inspections, I'm not going to go way back, but I'll just mention when I was very young, two things. One, I was very hands-on, did a lot of remodeling with my dad. We basically had a house that seven of us lived in, but it only was built to accommodate maybe three or four. So we had to turn the attic into a master bedroom, add a bathroom. So basically, he did it. He wasn't bringing in contractors or anything. And I was a kid at the time, and I stood by his side and I learned with him, and he was sure to point out my mistakes, which I learned from as well. My dad is a perfectionist. I still remember him mitering edges of molding, and if they weren't perfect, it was take them down and do it again. So part of that anal thought process kind of transferred over to me and stuck with me. The second thing that I bring from my earlier years is I don't want to say natural leadership, but I always seem to move into leadership type of roles. I mean, captain of my baseball team, captain of the soccer team. I led the key club in high school. I was an RA all 4 years in college, and just kind of always had where I had not necessarily people reporting up to me, but I was responsible for people. I was responsible for assets. So coming up and moving into the home inspection field, uh, I had a career in retail and finance. And basically, the company I was working for at the time, and this is right around 2004, decided, well, along with a lot of other companies, were offshoring a lot of their business. They found they can do it cheaper, and it all came to shareholder value. So I was at the time had worked my way and lived in Florida, and I had a choice either to leave Florida and move to Virginia, or take a package and step away from the company, which I chose because I didn't want to move my family for the fourth time in 4 years. Did some soul searching, kind of went back to what I just said. I enjoy working with people, educating people, and so after a few dabs of potentially buying franchises in other industries, I found home inspection and Nachi, and really read up on it, did everything I could, and decided that was what I wanted to do. Was educating people, telling them about the properties that they were buying, and as opposed to my role with the financial company that I left, I didn't have to lay off 500 people. I always said if I was going to fire somebody, it was going to be me. So that's the thing I enjoyed about being an entrepreneur, that I was solely responsible for the first 8 years of Waypoint. I was solely responsible for me and my actions. So that's how basically I got into the home inspection. And I went to my first Nachi conference. It was in South Florida, Miami, in I believe it was August of 2005. And I've been a member of Nachi ever since, and been a member of CCPIA pretty close to the beginning. So I will turn it over to Mark now, who I've known going on 40 years, 50 years,
50.
going on 50 years, and he can explain that part of the story.
Thanks, Bob. Yeah, it's been 50 years since we met when we were in 7th grade, 12 years old. So it's been a long journey, and Bob and I were roommates way back when. Then Bob got married, but I got into the industry in a little bit different path. I wasn't sure what I wanted to do from a work standpoint per se. Went to college for a couple years, came home, and then actually became licensed as a paralegal and got involved in computer science. Did that for a few years and then got involved in commercial insurance, handling workers' comp, commercial liability claims, all the fun stuff. And then graduated up into risk management for Wells Fargo. So I was handling a lot of property inspections, safety inspections, things in that nature, which kind of indirectly is what we're doing now. As Bob said, when he was going through his changes in corporate life, he and I were talking basically every day, and he's like, "Oh, I'm looking at this," and "Oh, I'm looking at that," and he had said once he got started, he was like, "Oh, you need to get into this business. There's a school over here owned by Kevin O'Malley. You got to come and get certified." I didn't have time. I was spending 3/4 of my life on an airplane. But finally, in 2006, I said to my wife, it's time. I think we start a small side hustle and see what we can build from it. And I went over and I stayed at Bob's house for 2 weeks and went to ITA Kaplan and got certified with some of the old timers, like what's his name, who lives over
Norman.
by Bob now, Mark.
Don Norman.
No, well,
Don Norman, Mark Kramer.
Don Norman, Mark Kramer, and we can never remember the other guy who's now raising llamas in North Carolina. But got started part-time. And in 2008, my boss at Wells Fargo was looking for any excuse to get rid of us because it was the beginning of the end in the insurance industry and the finance industry. So I got laid off and actually said to my wife, "I will make this work." And a long time ago, and Bob will remember this, I filmed a video with Mike Crow talking about this. And then 2008, the real estate market collapsed. So we were focusing on insurance inspections and we just kept building it. So from there, for about the first 7 years, was a single inspector. And then, as we both affectionately say, if we didn't hire people, we would have been eating dinner through a straw. And built it from there. And it's been a great ride. It truly has. I mean, I joined InterNACHI right when I became certified, then became part of the other association, and then just started building. and then
So,
became part of CCPIA as soon as we could.
so Mark, it's safe to say that Bob's an enabler.
Oh, without question. Without question. And you know what? I will take it every day of my life.
Yeah, yeah. It's fun to hear. Bob, I think we have similar backgrounds because my father was the same way, to the point he bought a Japanese hand miter saw that when you cut the angles, the sawdust was almost creamy because you had to make sure they were as tight could be. And I didn't inherit. My brother is a master carpenter. He got to inherit that saw, but I inherited a couple other fun things with that. But yeah, I understand that whole you described it as an anal personality. Oh yeah, definitely that. So with your unique relationship and bond, I think we would be remiss to say that there's a third Beatle in this group that's not with us, and that would be Eddie, correct?
Correct.
There's actually two other needles that aren't in this group because Austin is part of the team as well. But yeah, Mark and I have known each other for, like you said, going on a long time. And when you do another podcast about how you beat somebody up the first time you meet them, we'll talk about that aspect of the relationship. But yeah, Eddie is I've known Eddie for probably going on 40 years. Eddie is we have four managing directors of Waypoint, and Eddie is over here with me in Tampa, and he is my brother-in-law. And then number four is Austin, who basically is behind um, all the systems that we use and processes and Google and all of that stuff that the younger generation understands a lot more than we do. He's part of the company as the fourth owner. But yeah, it was great to have Mark show an interest in home inspection. I said he came over and spent some time with me, did some training. He actually piggybacked with Waypoint. Thus, we were two separate companies, Waypoint East, where he could do similar branding, and we co-branded on a website, kind of to accelerate, his start in the business, so he could focus on the inspection aspect and eventually growing a team. So, and then a few years ago, we decided to formally join forces under one umbrella as one company, and therefore, it enabled us to expand our coverage areas and just expand our services, and really probably was the jump off part of ramping up the commercial aspect of our services as well.
Sure. So that makes an interesting point that I'd like to jump off on if I could. So obviously having some co-branding of like-minded people, that gave you some economy of scale, wouldn't you say? Where you didn't have to pay ostensibly twice for creating the same thing, and you both could cohabitate in the same space but be separate, correct?
Yes, very much so.
And
Um,
and and really, and one of the benefits was we looked much bigger than we
Mhm.
were because people were seeing our branding on both coasts of Florida at the time.
Sure. And did you find the benefit of, with that broader breadth of potential clients moving from east to west or west to east, and being able to say, I know that product?
Actually, it's funny. It's not necessarily the client making the purchases, but it's some of the realtors.
Oh,
Actually, I was at a July 4th party for real producers several years ago and posted a picture on social media, and I immediately get a text from Bob. It said, "Tell Logan I said hello." Well, a realtor who I was standing with started working with Bob when he opened the company. And he moved over to the East Coast. So he trusted us, and he's
Uh-huh.
actually one of our biggest agents here now.
That's terrific. Because we all know that, at least I hope those watching know that your referral source you might see a half a dozen, 2 dozen times a year, but you're only going to see your client once every few years. And so it's a much deeper relationship that you're building.
Correct.
So, you look at the name Waypoint Property Inspections, and if you listen or watch any of the stuff that we try to produce, I mean, you guys hit it on the head. Property inspections. Have you always been Waypoint Property Inspections, or did you have home in the name at the beginning?
No, when I was thinking of the name of the company, obviously at the time I wasn't thinking about where it would be in the phone book. But but I one of the things I always did with my dad was we were out in the boat every weekend and just doing our thing, crabbing, fishing. This is up in the Northeast where when it was blue crab season, that's where you were. And when it came to choosing a name, it took me a little bit of while to going through different things. I was thinking about Keystone, but I'm like, we don't build with brick down here,
Yeah.
or really just those type of things. And I came across and I was like, Waypoint. And then as I described, people, why did you choose Waypoint? Well, Waypoint is basically a step in the path that you want to take. Maritime, it's if you want to get from here to there, you got to go different steps, and each step is called a waypoint. So, in the step of home ownership, one of the waypoints is a home inspection. So when I have the opportunity to explain that, and people will look up what waypoint is because a lot of them don't know, it becomes clear. And the other thing, which is probably a premonition, because when I came up with the name, I didn't want to pigeonhole it as home inspections. Um, didn't obviously know a lot more now than I did then. When I first started, that's all that home inspectors were doing at the time was home inspections. And then, like Mark said, the real estate boom in the or real estate bust in the early
Yeah.
2000s. Um, had our open our eyes up, and we were able to add commercial inspections. But I didn't want to pigeonhole and use the word home inspections, although I was told back then by the SEO masters, oh, you got to have home because people are going to be searching home inspections. I didn't want to go that route. So from day one, we've been Waypoint Property Inspections, and it just lends itself to where we are today, where we are. I think Mark, you say this, way more than a home inspection. I mean, we do everything now to the extent that we can, and we can get licensed and certified. So, and commercial is, outside of the individual services that we've added, commercial has been the biggest add-on. Always did commercial, but commercial focus has been the biggest add-on over the last few years.
You and I, Bob, have a similar sort of background where our teeth or a lot of our first stone cutting was done through the folks at ITA out of Oceanside. And
Yep.
I certainly I for one used to teach at their facilities and always taught at their and presented at their national conferences all the way through the ending of that operation. I know they had a very strong focus on commercial. Was that your first adoption into commercial inspections? Was their focus?
When I first started and I was taking the ITA classes, I dealt a lot with. I mean, obviously I was in Tampa, but I dealt a lot with the Oceanside office, and I can't remember the young lady at this point because it's over 20 years
Yeah.
ago. Part of my package from my previous employer was educational money.
Mhm.
And it was a nice amount of money, but I had a certain amount of time to use it. So I was front loading my career with a heck of a lot of classes because I wanted to spend the money that I felt I deserved, and I did it. And I actually took, I remember, I mean, obviously the ITA class um, for home inspections was 2 weeks long. But uh, I took the commercial class that they offered, I think within a couple weeks of taking that class. And again, I've been doing commercial inspections since the beginning,
Mhm.
limiting myself because you don't know what you don't know at the time to the smaller commercial, to the stores in a strip center, to the executive
Mhm.
offices and all that. And by taking that class through ITA early on, among the other classes that they offered, pool class, especially for down here in Florida.
Yep.
Um, I think I got a good foundation that lent itself to being able to have a great starting point for when we got into the true commercial inspections, which we've been doing for now 4 or 5 years.
And Mark, did you do most of your training through Bob, or did you also go out and into the marketplace and find training sources?
Well, I took the classes through ITA,
Yeah.
and then obviously having access to the Internachi classes.
Mhm.
Um, I did a lot of, excuse me, a lot of the training through that. And honestly, Bob would be out in an inspection and call me and ask me a question, or I would call and ask him a question. And this was long before you could text a picture.
Yeah.
So it was, oh my God, I'm looking at this and I got to describe it to him. And he's like, I don't know. Or I'm like, I don't know. And it was because I had been doing commercial property inspections for insurance and for safety inspections and stuff. There were things that I had picked up on where we would travel out to Southern California to a couple factories or to wonderful Elger, Pennsylvania to go see how they manufacture toilets. But knowing and figuring out the electrical patterns and the structural patterns and things like that so that we could inspect and instruct factory workers about what not to do.
Yeah.
So it dovetailed right into, okay, you're a homeowner now. Don't stick your two fingers in the holes. Or if you're a commercial property owner, don't stick your three fingers in those big holes because your hair's going to stand up. But it was trial and error. And again, because the market collapsed in 08 and we were focusing on insurance inspections, wind mitigations when they first became popular, that helped to float the boat for a while.
Now we're gonna have people watching this that are gonna have all kinds of different backgrounds. And I find the most interesting part of the story between the four of you, I'll say, at Waypoint is the fact that first, you've gotten along at least enough to be here, looking like the Brady Bunch for 50 years, but you're able to run a synergistic operation on two halves of a state. And there's going to be some that are going to be watching this or listening, however they digest this information, going, I'm done being alone. I know enough that I want to have help, because if I take a day off, my whole operation took a day off. And so I'd love to hear a little bit from you guys on how it's been to have that I'm sorry, Mark, I'm going to talk about baseball. Um, yeah, when your
We did better
beloved
than you
Mets
guys.
and your beloved Mets. I'll never not be a Cub fan, so I can be long suffering forever. But having a righty, so to speak, in the bullpen that you always have is for me critical. So I'd like to hear a little bit about how how you've either enjoyed or relied on each other so that you could have a life.
It's interesting because I think we both had local friends in the industry
Mm.
that, because obviously being 3.5 hours apart, if I decided to go on vacation, Bob wasn't going to shut down his side and come over here. So we had our local resources who we're still friends with, and I would be planning a vacation, and I would pick up the phone and say to this other inspector, who was at the time a single man shop,
Mm.
hey, I'm going to forward my phones to you. Can you handle them while I'm away? And he's like, sure, don't worry, I'm not taking the realtors or whatever. And I would do the same for him. And it's a very interesting thought process because Bob and I both joined mastermind groups early on. And we're one of the few industries that we can sit in a room with our direct competition and talk about how to better both companies. It's not like you can do that in the food industry or the service industries. I mean, Ford and General Motors are not going to sit in the same room. And we literally, all the message boards, all the Facebook boards, all the groups that are out there to help each other. While yes, there are some out there that if you put up a question and you got some guy in Iowa who doesn't like what you're saying, he's going to bash you. But for the most part, it's gotten very supportive. Hey, I've never seen this before. What is this?
Mm-hmm.
And you throw up a picture. So from that standpoint, yes, we rely on each other. We have always relied on each other. And then you bring Eddie in, who brings a whole nother perspective because he came from a totally different background than the two of us. And he's probably, from an inspection standpoint, the most anal of the three of us, or close, or detail oriented.
Okay.
Um,
Bob's got the brother-in-law face going right now.
Yeah, he can do an inspection better than us
correct.
because he's stayed close to it over the years to the point where he's right now, well, not at the moment, but where he's probably 75% still in the field. So yeah, from my perspective, Rob, I didn't forward the calls to another company because I was very possessive of my
Yeah.
relationships. However, and I didn't take really long vacations. I took 3, 4, 5 day vacations, knowing that I could still be available within the contingency period. But I did have, like Mark said, I did have um, a few inspectors that I quote unquote grew up in the industry with that were, close enough that if a realtor needed one within the time period that I was not available, that they could go somewhere else. But most of them, I would tell you, made accommodations to my schedule because it fell within the contingency, or they got a little bit of an extension to do that I could do the inspection. So when Mark was talking about us getting along, and I think the three of us on this call totally get it. And it doesn't mean that everybody in the industry gets it, especially one-man shops. Is we have the mindset of owners, we have the mindset of entrepreneurs, we have the mindset of business building, where the folks that are like one person shops, or it's work to them. I'm not discrediting them, because it was that way for a number of years for me. Was, I had my blinders on and I was doing inspections, churning out reports, making money, scheduling inspections and doing inspections and churning. It's a mindset. So once we can talk to people, what do you want to do? Okay, do you want to grow your business? Some don't. They prefer, and I have friends to this day that have been in the business just as long as I have, and they're very happy being a one person shop who does close up numerous times of the year and goes on vacation. But they have the reputation that they know the folks that they work with will always be there for them. But talking with the others that are maybe newer into business or trying to understand, is you've got to get out of that quote unquote inspector mindset and be a business owner mindset.
Yeah.
That inspection is your service, but there's a lot more elements to your business that you have to be wide-eyed to and be able to focus on. And that there's a big difference out there between the folks that see it that way and the folks that that don't see it that way. And they'll, as I was, they'll always be running in mud.
Yeah.
They'll always be trying to get to the other side, but they'll always be running in mud.
I heard a term many years ago, and I think it kind of hits what Mark said. It's cohabitation, where you cooperate. And why is it that you think that the inspection industry, let's say the inspection industry within your arm's reach, because you hit it on the head, there could be somebody somewhere else that will beat you up or beat you down. But why is it that those inspectors or colleagues in your arm's reach are so independently supportive of each other in this industry and not so in others?
I see it as, there's no way we're going to get 100% of the market share. And even if we had 100% of the market share, we would burn out and flame out and jump off a bridge. Is you got to realize that you can't service everybody. So you want to create that cohabitation, or whatever your word you use.
Coopetition.
Cooperation. Yeah, cohabit. No, I don't want to live with it. You want
We'll
to
put subtitles across the bottom of this when we add it.
You want to create that synergy with the other quote unquote good guys out there, and we do that. There are a number of companies in our area that are similar in size and similar in scope, and we get along well. And it's like, hey, if I can get 7% of my market share, I'll help you get 7%, and I'll help you get 7%. There's still 79% of the market share out there. So that's really the feeling. And then when you have folks come in that have a different mindset and all that, you have this coalition, to stay on the code words. You have this coalition that can hopefully educate them or show them otherwise, that there's a better way to work in the same market with your quote unquote competitors.
And that's always kind of been my favorite, is when you get together with those like-minded individuals that we're all cutting our scalps on nails and attics, and we're all bruising our knees, getting down and doing things, so we can all talk about it. So when we get together on that monthly basis, it's the same jokes, it's the same stories. And these are the things you can't talk about with your spouse or somebody else, because maybe they're not living that on a daily basis. And so maybe it's the foxhole mentality. I'm not sure.
Well, it's funny that you talk about scraping heads and bruising knees. I don't think there's an injury Bob would have that I wouldn't have about 2 weeks later. Other than he got stuck on a nail once.
How many times I fell off a roof. There was one story. I mean, I knew I was falling. It was at the entry point. I was about 14 feet up, And, not to digress a little bit, I always had a habit when I was accessing a roof, before I did anything, I pictured myself falling off the roof, Rob. And what that did was that snapped me into being laser focused. And I remember this one time, afterwards, I didn't do that. And as a result, I was climbing up the ladder, accessing the roof. It was over a porch, and my balance wasn't quite what it should have been. And I knew I was falling down. I did everything I did to catch myself. I still remember it was in South Tampa. It was on a cul-de-sac, and I yelled out F as loud as I could because I knew what was happening. There was nobody around, thank God. And the buyer and our agent were inside. But I came down and I hit my ankle to the point where I didn't break anything, but I had a high ankle sprain for about 8 months because I had to work through it.
Yeah.
And finished the inspection. And then the next day and this is right before I was going to one of the masterminds in Atlanta. So that was what, I don't remember what year that was, 14 to whatever. But it was like and I was like, and I had already arranged to dive the Georgia Aquarium. If you're a diver and you've never
Yeah.
gone diving in the Georgia Aquarium, do it. And I was like thinking to myself, oh, I could be able to do this. Darn it. I've been looking forward to this. And the next day I had an inspection. I couldn't put any weight on my leg, but I had to do the inspection. It was a vacant house. So basically, if somebody came by, they would have seen an inspector basically crawling through the house. I got it done.
Yep.
The day after that, like right before I was traveling to Atlanta, I was able to start putting weight on it. So I was eventually able to to go to the conference and to dive the aquarium, but I had a high ankle. My ankle was swelled up and bothered me for 8 months after that. But always, I mean, think about what you're going to do before you do it. We
I
always
can't
talk
tell you
about,
how many roofs I've been on. I've looked around going, I can Rambo that tree. I
Yes.
know if
Yeah,
something
I
happens,
have to. I have to.
I can jump that tree, and I'm
Yeah.
going to come down it. And you guys all have, in Florida, there's a lot of the palm trees. We're lucky enough up in the North Midwest, a lot of pine. So those are easy to grab.
Yeah. Yeah, well,
So-
I'm wearing a scar on my neck from falling off a roof about 6 months after Bob did. Because I landed
And
on
I've
my
got a
feet
scar
and-
from 6 surgeries on my wrist when I fell and shattered it and tore all the ligaments in my thumb. So, I mean, I don't think, I'm the only one, and I'm going to knock on everything I got around me. I'm the only inspector that ever worked at my entire company that didn't go through an attic.
Good for you.
And I made it 33 years and 15,000
you.
inspections. And that's why I'm never going to do another inspection again, because I'm going to go out undefeated.
Yeah.
There you
Yeah.
go. We'll trade
I'm
you
0
for
for 2.
a player to
Yeah.
be named later.
Yeah.
So
I'm 0 for 2.
I'll ask both of you this because I think it's a good breath to talk about with the 2 operational locations. Mark, how many inspectors do you have in your location?
Currently, we have 6. At one point in the past couple of years, we were as big as 10.
Yeah. And we know Florida's having some issues right now with
Florida's having issues, and there's some things I'd rather not discuss about.
Yeah.
But we've grown, we've shrunk, we've grown, we've shrunk, and it's the industry.
It's an ebb and flow. It's a tide.
Correct.
Yeah.
So we were as big as 10 plus myself and the support staff.
And Bob, how many do you have in the Tampa side?
I think we're at 12.
12. And
Yeah.
and do you share resources?
Mhm.
Which
Yes,
resources do you share?
Our client care,
Okay.
our client care team, we have 3 stateside and 4 global team members that support us out of the Philippines. Phenomenal team. We have a phenomenal team. Yep, and they support all locations, including Orlando.
So you're able to answer phones live 24/7?
No,
No.
we answer phones until 9 o'clock at night, I believe.
Mhm.
No, let me, but soon we will be answering phones 24/7. It may not be answered by a live person, but we're
Yeah.
actually starting to work with a company that will answer it using AI.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
no, we close down at 9 and we reopen at 8 in the morning.
8 in the morning.
Yeah.
Do you find 8 to be good, or on because I know a lot of inspectors might have an inspection schedule that's 8 o'clock or maybe even 9 o'clock.
Yeah, in our area, because of the
Ah,
super access rules are 9 a.m. They won't
okay.
let you in before 9 a.m. So, but we have somebody on the clock at 7:30. Our phones don't turn on until 8 a.m. So, I mean, it's somebody is there. All of our client care team works remotely, whether they're in
Yeah.
the States or outside of the States. So they have the ability literally to work in their pajamas if they want. So we
Oh,
have somebody that jumps on at 7:30 and starts what happened from last night, which is very little because we work pretty late in the night, but emails and getting
yeah.
the day set up and all that, and then they're ready, and then we have others join them at 8. So I feel confident in our coverage, and now we're adding this AI element that will basically help with any type of overflow or after hours calls.
The first company I worked for was in Metairie, Louisiana,
Yep.
back
I know better.
1988. And we worked out of a converted garage where the overhead doors were replaced with sliders. And there was a neighbor across the street who got $25 a kill. And so every time we left the office, she got the calls forwarded. And she'd shuffle over in her muumuu dress and slippers and hand us 3x5 cards with booked jobs, and my ownership would hand her $25 in cash per job. So I definitely appreciate client and customer care people being able to work at home, because they get very motivated for that opportunity.
I
What's
can't get
even
past the
more-
visual of the muumuu.
Oh, it's a
Yeah.
muumuu dress. It was puffy slippers, and she'd shuffle because she never lifted her feet, and she'd shuffle across the street, up the driveway, get squished by the magnolia flowers and all the stuff that came off the tree. And it's burned from 1988, burned into my head, and I'll never forget it.
But
Yeah, from the
what's even more interesting is when Bob talks about our overseas team. These team members work our hours.
Okay.
So when they start at 8 a.m. our time, it's 9 p.m. their time. They're 13 hours ahead. So they're working through the night till the morning. And they love it. They're dedicated. They love their job. They love who they work for. And their kids and they're all very young, they're all sleeping while mommy's working.
Okay.
yeah.
That's I mean, I'd love to talk, maybe that's even an opportunity to talk more about that opportunity, because I imagine there's other inspectors that are looking at you going, wow, I didn't think that could work. I didn't think I'd have that opportunity. I mean, I see it as a huge win for you guys, and no wonder why Waypoint is property inspections is so successful, is you've got a tool bag that you're not afraid to use every tool in, versus others that have that paralyzation by analysis, so to speak. How about sales staff? Are you able to share the same sales staff, or do you guys keep those that, because of the 3.5 hours, you got dedicated teams?
Yes. Yes to both. Yes to both of them. Obviously, our boots on the ground are separate, but they do collaborate. We do have meetings, and they share what works for them. Interestingly enough, that what we do on the West Coast doesn't necessarily work as well on the East Coast, and vice versa. It's just the makeup and the personality of the realtors, the market. But they work well together and they're very successful. And then we also have our online sales or online marketing. And that's another global team member who's been with us for 4 years now,
Yes.
which is phenomenal. And she does all of our social media, all whatever. I don't even, I know Facebook, which if I didn't own a company, I probably wouldn't be on Facebook. But I know Facebook, but Facebook, Instagram, and whatever whatever is out there. Plus, she does our newsletter, and she's just on top of that, and that's done jointly. So the answer to your question is yes and yes.
Yeah.
And then
So
we also utilize a third-party company who helps to do the SEO and Google ads and
yeah,
all of the other online presence to make
Sure.
sure that when somebody searches Waypoint, we're popping up, whether it's a Google guaranteed or, I
Mhm.
mean, the fact is we're the second highest rated inspection company in Florida with 4,500 five-star reviews, which has taken a long time to get. But you know what? It's when you say you've got 4,500 reviews and you look at your competition and they have 32, 48. Some of
you
them
got,
have a couple hundred or 1,000 because they've been around.
yeah, you've got a lot of cousins too.
Yes, cousins, aunts, uncles. No, just kidding.
It's that
You-
mindset. It's the
Yeah.
mindset that,
yeah,
it's that entrepreneurial mindset. What can you do to build your business? What can you do to stand out your business? Considering, in Florida, we probably have already crossed the threshold of 20,000 licensed inspectors. Granted, they're not all living, not all practicing, but the highest number of inspectors in any state. So how are you going to separate yourself? Use, like you said, Rob, make sure you have all the tools in your toolbox and then use all the tools in your toolbox. And CCPIA, InterNACHI, conferences, there are folks that don't even know these things exist because they have those blinders on.
Yeah.
And I'd be more than happy, and I think any of us on this call or within our circle, big circle, huge circle, would be willing to help people open up and see those opportunities in front of them.
So so I think we need to bring it around to talking about commercial, even though this is all this. I mean, this is fabulous. Is when did you decide that you wanted to absolutely focus on the commercial? I know you've always done commercial. I mean, coming from the early 2000s, mid 2000s ITA, they never not focused on commercial.
Right.
What made you think that Waypoint should put an actual emphasis on commercial?
Well, we got to give credit where credit is due. I was online I'm always online looking at opportunities to become educated, to educate. And literally, I came across CCPIA. It didn't have a huge online presence at the time. And I came across it and I looked at it and I read it. Then this is about 4 years ago, 5 years ago. Then I took all
Yeah.
the available classes on my own. I didn't say anything to the team. I read into it, obviously knowing its associations and how it came about. Really, the only true association for inspectors out there. And I took the classes. I said, there's something here. And so I took the classes, and then during one of our leadership meetings with our servicing team, I brought up the website, I brought up the classes, and I said, guys, guys, gals, I personally see commercial inspections as a bigger part of our business, eventually a bigger part of our business than residential. I actually want commercial to be a bigger part of our business because there's less emotion involved. There's a lot of resources, a lot of approaches and protocols that can make us successful. I'd rather go out there and make this amount at a commercial than have to make the same amount by doing 10 residentials, you know, in the same time period. So that's really when the light bulb went off in my head, is when I found ccpia.org, and signed up, became a member, got with the team behind it, talked to them about it, knowing that there was an association with InterNACHI, and took the classes, and then showed my team. And then I believe it was 2021 January, we sent 4 of our inspectors to Boulder, to the CCPIA class. I was supposed to go, but at the time I was also um, teaching home inspection online course for another company, so I had to pull myself out. But it was great to go this year with you, Rob. And they came back and they were just wowed, and they were so what I found by, I know we would have found it eventually, but that day that I found CCPIA really opened our eyes up to what we want to do. Now we have a supporting system, and the education and the training, and just the go-to resources to help us to help us get there. And I just think about where we were, you know, back 3-4 years ago to where we are today. It's night and day, and we're not even close to where we can be. And that's the cool part of it.
Yeah,
And to be recognized in the commercial inspection field for that, the calls we get, you know, it's kind of like I don't want to say instant reputation, but when you put yourself out there as well educated and associated with this great, you know, organization that's supporting you, it legitimizes who you are and what you're doing.
I found the CCPIA through the similar journey. I actually quit doing all residential inspections in 2016. As for the same reasons, it's emotion, and I'm done. I just can't. I just don't want to walk through another house again. I want to be able to look through bigger properties and have some more fun. And so I spent 16 through 19 searching, and found it somewhere in 19. So that's when I asked earlier, the differences between what you learned at ITA back then to that translation of your team going in 21. There's a little different mindset
Oh yeah.
on the performance of the standard of, you know, using the ComSop. And Mark, who probably didn't have that same background of, you know, other than being on the insurance side of the commercial. I mean, what do you guys feel is the biggest advantage of performing an inspection using the ComSop versus the anything else that you might have used in the past?
I think because I've been involved in quite a few of the commercial jobs already, and helping to price and quote them. It gives you, and I'm going to reference our team event this past weekend that we did bowling. It gives us the bumpers to work off of. It gives us the guidelines. While on the residential side, everybody has their standards of practice. We all know everybody kind of weaves back and forth and invents whatever they think is best. Where on the commercial side, it's obviously much more important to follow the guidelines for fire doors, for ladder safety, for all the areas where you're talking about industrial conditions, confined spaces, where if somebody's not comfortable in a small confined space, how are they going to do it when there's an emergency situation? So this gives us the blueprint and the guidelines to be able to sit with the inspectors and say, okay, this is what we're looking at right now. And we can adjust our template or our procedures depending on the type of inspection it is. if it's a warehouse
Mhm.
versus a medical building versus a shopping center, versus even a restaurant. Because we have internal debates about restaurant inspections. But again, we go back to the comp shop and we look at it and say, okay, this is what they're recommending.
Mhm.
And then I throw in what you told us in Fort Lauderdale last year. So it puts a little bit more icing on the cake. It's like, why wouldn't you turn on a stove? You turn a stove on at home. So why wouldn't
Yeah.
you inspect the equipment? So
Right.
it really is the actual best blueprint to follow for doing the commercial work.
Yeah, back in 2005, when I learned home inspections, then I learned commercial. There was no standards of practice for commercial inspections,
Mm.
as far as I knew. And so basically, I was a home inspector who did commercial inspections. Big difference now. We're not a home inspector doing commercial inspections. We're a commercial inspection company
Yeah.
doing commercial inspections. And now we have, like Mark said, the bumpers or the ComSop to work towards. And like I said earlier, it legitimizes
Yeah.
not only us, but it legitimizes like CCPIA and the organization who developed the standards with a lot of input from the field. Um, it legitimizes us in the eyes of the people that are looking to hire us and looking
Yeah.
to build the relationship with us. Big difference, a home inspector that does commercial versus a commercial inspector.
Now, I've been privy through our association, not the CCBA, our association, and friendships that I have with both of you and Eddie, and I haven't met Austin yet, but I would imagine I will before 25 is out, if he's going to be at the Internachi Pro
will.
Convention. But
He will.
what was your largest project in 2024?
We had actually two fairly large ones. One was about I want to say about 150,000 square foot warehouse space in Orlando that had offices in it. And then the other one was well, we had two. We had a big commercial project down in Key West that Bob and I put together for a commercial property owner that owned 160 townhomes.
Oh,
And we had to go down and do 160 wind mitigations and 4 points. And jokingly enough, try to stay sober walking in and out of these townhomes because you'd walk in and it was always a lot of fun. But it was a great project. It was a very profitable project, and we keep in touch with that
Mhm.
owner because he owns literally about $750 million worth of commercial properties in Florida. And then we did another large, I think it was an apartment or condo complex on the West Coast
Mhm.
where we did large inspections, including termite inspections, because we are licensed to do termites,
Mhm.
and found that it was pretty much chewed up from termites along with everything else we found. And we were able to take that and refer it to a commercial pest control company who we have arrangements with. So, I mean, they were all north of 100,000, easily 100 to 150,000 square feet.
And you were able to complete all those inspections with your own teammates, correct?
Yes.
Correct.
So
The Key West
let's
job,
talk.
we took 6 of us down,
Mhm.
spent 4.5 days doing the inspection. I believe the one in Orlando, we had 3 inspectors, because again, most of it was warehouse.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So the fun thing was watching them fly drones inside a warehouse, and one of them kissing a drone off the wall. The other one, I want to say we had 8 inspectors on down in
It's,
Sarasota or wherever it was.
yeah, it was over in Pinellas County, and basically what we do is we look at our available resources and the time, not the time it will take, the time well, the time it will take and then the time frame that we want to complete it. You know, do we want to do it over a day or two, or do we want to try to knock it out? And based on our resources, we determine that. So most of them, aside from the Key West one, which was literally, you know, 4.5 days of long work, long days to get it done. Most of them we knock out in a day, even the real, even the larger ones. We also did a mall that was like 80% vacant over in the central part. That was another fairly large one that we did. But you know, just like anything else, we do we did a RV slash campsite commercial inspection.
Mhm.
You know, some unique ones that we did. You know, we do them, and you know, it's been fun, and you know, like I said earlier, we're still refining the process. You know, there was a reason we attended the we attended the call yesterday on pricing, because we're still, you know, we actually brought our one of our client care coordinators. We had him on the call because he's become our expert in taking the commercial calls. Is our client care team will get it in. They know how to price, quote unquote, the easy stuff. But when it gets a little bit bigger or more complex, then they have our commercial specialist get in and work with the servicing team to come up with proper quotes. So we had him on the call to show. He was really excited too. We actually let him out of the locked room for an hour. That's why he was happy. But you know, he learned a lot, and he came back with a lot. So we asked him, put down your thoughts, and since you own these calls. So we still, again, haven't even touched the tip of the iceberg, Rob. You know, it's
Yeah.
a lot of it'll come through experience. You know, trials and tribulations, starts and stops. But compared to where we are today, compared to where we were 2 years ago, 1 year ago, 3 years ago, 5 years ago, it's we've come a long ways forward, but we're not even close to where I don't think we'll ever get to where we can be, because of all the dynamics that are happening out there.
When I was managing a team, I had a fairly deep bench, like you have a deep bench. And there's a lot of benefits and nimbleness or dexterity you get with a deep bench. And one of the struggles I always had, and I'd love to hear your point of view on it, is with a deep bench, I got very excited when a big job came in because I thought I could send the entire hunting party out, right, at one time and take down the woolly mammoth in one shot. And there are times that was very good, and there are times that was very bad. Not bad that on my company, but bad because that's not what the client wanted. And I lost the work because I would bid a job based on, okay, here's the size, here's my deployment, and I'm going to knock this thing out in 48 hours. When somebody else can come in and spend the month. And so, what have you used to determine when do I send the entire squad, or when do I slow play the job?
I don't know that honestly we've ever slow played a job.
Good for you.
Because what it comes down to is, and this is the joke between the coasts, the East Coast office is used to doing at least one or two every month houses that are 15, 20,000 square feet, where I'll send 5 or 6 team members.
Mhm.
And we'll get that house done in 3.5 hours.
Right. It's a box.
So our thought process is kind of it's profitability, and do we don't want to kill our team members.
Yeah.
So we want to have enough people where they're not going to get overworked at a big commercial job, but at the same time getting it done, like Bob said, in one day.
Yeah.
Or potentially 2 days, because it's going to take time to prep the work, prep the templates, and then write the work at the end. Because obviously now you're taking 5 or 6 inspectors and their templates and merging it all together.
Right.
We've not yet been able to figure out how to do a brain transplant. So we're waiting for Nick to invent that.
Yeah. Or Dr. Frankenstein.
Yes,
There you go.
Frau Blücher.
It's also about specialization. Well, I don't want to call specialization, but tasks. When we have a job that looks like the woolly mammoth, how do you eat a woolly mammoth?
One bite at a
One
time.
bite at a time. So basically, we'll look at the commercial property, we'll know our resources, and then we'll divide the resources and do divide and conquer. Like we did a fairly large office building. I'm going to say office, and we're talking like 3 floors and probably a probably about a 60,000. I think it was 20,000 per floor, something like that. And we just specialize. And, okay, you're doing systems, you're doing electrical, you're doing, so just divide it up. So the whole idea is everybody has a role to do, and then when their role ends, if we're still inspecting, then they'll join somebody else to help them extend their role. So it's not, and it's just, it happens that way on the larger homes that we inspect too. Is, you got to have, I don't want to call it specialization, because all of our inspectors can do all of the job. It's just today you're going to be doing heating and cooling. Today you're going to, based upon it, and they get it done. They don't feel overwhelmed because they know exactly what their end goal is, and they go in and they tackle it. And then we usually have one inspector. It's usually a senior who inspects, but their workload isn't as heavy as the rest of the team. So they're there as the point person or the project manager. So it works. And they may be tired at the end of the inspection, but they're fulfilled, and I don't believe they're overworked. And since day one, Rob, one of the first things I did, which was not very common in the industry, was I promised same day delivery on reports. This is for residential. We don't do that on commercial because it's a whole different ball game. But expediency and getting the job done in the right amount of time has always been important to us. We don't slow play because we want that next $200,000 job that
Oh,
we
exactly.
otherwise wouldn't get. Yeah.
I taught a class last week to the Department of Interior, and we had 30 senior managers in there who's got 5,000 buildings across the country that they're developing a program for. And I told them, I said, my expectation when I do inspections is do the inspection today, you get the report tomorrow. And they're still waiting on reports 6 months later from engineering firms. And they don't understand and I get what you're saying about compartmentalizing. I don't want to say specialize. I like to use compartmentalize because where we're challenged in this industry is there's yet to be a software developed that allows that perfect merging / take 9 inspectors with 9 different vocabularies and 9 different points of view and create one report with one syntax.
Yeah.
It's not out there because all the inspection softwares that I have seen are residentially focused, where it's one inspector, maybe 2 inspectors, or 1 inspector and an assistant going through houses. And when Mark says, yeah, we'll go do a big house on the coast and there's 5 inspectors, though that's still 5 reports that have to be manipulated to create one. And that's the challenge with the commercial report writing side.
Well,
Yeah.
I think to that point, Rob, we actually took your template from CCPIA, and we have a gentleman in Orlando who has literally taken what you provided, taken what we had, and taken another template, and we've created a template that pretty much covers all aspects
Right.
in the software that we use. And the software does actually seamlessly merge it.
Yeah.
Because
And
they're not creating their own comments.
Yeah, I was going to
Good.
say, and that's the key, and we do that on residential side. Is our template is, I'll call it foolproof. meaning everything they need, we put in the template. There shouldn't be anything they have to add. Now, we don't want to take their personality away. I mean, how they deliver the report on site, they can use their personality. But, when we have 20 people out there in the field using the same template, we want the people that we work with multiple times not to see a difference in how we write a report from one report to the next. So we worked really hard to train, to create and to train and to do quality checks to make sure that one report from one inspector doesn't look any different than a report from the other inspector. And we've done that, like Mark said, we've done that from the commercial side too. And the fact that our software, you could have 10 people working on a report, and then at the end of the day, they just put it into one full report. You're not gonna see any of those differences. And we even, I don't want to say, well, call out, through our quality, we'll call out somebody that puts in their own comment when a standard comment that we have says the same thing. And when I say call out, it's just basically educating. You don't have to type it.
Yeah.
It's there. Find it. It's there. So
Mhm.
everything looks the same and looks consistent.
And the
So
beauty of
this will be
technology-
our last episode for 2024. And so I would be embarrassed not to ask, what's your big goals for 25?
No hurricanes.
Yeah,
Awesome. Wish in one hand and do something in the other. We'll see which one fills up first.
well, that's what we were gonna do with you in Orlando, and we got one.
Yeah, we got one. We got one. I would say a big goal from the inspection side of the business is to really, um, which I've been wanting to do, and it's been a little bit of a challenge because of what we faced over the last couple of months, is to get in a room and have a 1-day workshop amongst the Waypoint team, the leadership team, and really make sure from beginning to end we have our commercial process hashed out to the point where our modem is to deliver a 5-star experience at every opportunity. And I know we're not delivering a 5-star experience at every opportunity with our commercial process. We're close. We're not falling flat on our faces. But there's a lot of moving pieces that we have to address. So my hope is at some point, sooner than later, probably in January, probably after you visit us in Tampa, is to have that workshop that'll include servicing, that'll include branding or marketing, and will definitely include at least Jonathan from our client care team, and probably somebody else, so we have redundancy to make sure that everybody has the opportunity for input, and everybody is an architect of that flow from beginning to report delivery and beyond. That would be a goal of mine, because I've been seeing it. I've been seeing it for 4 years, Rob. It's a matter of, and Mark and I talked about this earlier behind your back. No,
No,
no, I'm just kidding. We were on a call earlier. But so everybody truly understands the process, their role in the process, and how successful the process can be if everybody is bought in, and they're going to be bought in because they're going to be the architects of it. That would be my goal. And then um, we're getting together for 2.5 days next month, managing directors, to come up with our financial goals. And I know we're going to put a robust financial goal around commercial inspections as well. Like I said, I'd love to see commercial inspections be a big portion of, just like what you said, Rob, is
Yeah.
not necessarily shut down residential, but give our team the opportunity to be true like commercial inspectors. Have that commercial inspection team, that's all they're doing, rather than jumping back and forth between home inspections and commercial inspections.
I wish I was a fly on the wall in that room, because I don't think that conversation could have happened 4 years ago. I think you need to go out, do inspections, make mistakes, learn systems, meet people before you can craft and tailor any type of program.
Yep. You don't know what you don't know, and now
No.
we know it for the most part.
I'm sure
Mark?
if we wanted to have that commercial leadership meeting, we wouldn't have a hard time convincing you to come out of the cold in Denver to
Yeah.
help us mold the animal.
Right now, my 2025 is I'm teaching every other week somewhere in the country from January through June.
I
Right.
know you're coming back to Fort Lauderdale too, aren't you?
I will be in both coasts in the first quarter, and I'm very much looking forward, which is a great segue for this. I'm very much looking forward to sharing a libation with both of you, collectively or separate, however it might be, with 3.5 hours worth of difference.
Well, we'll
I
see
got
in
news for
Orlando,
you. I
too.
mean, we've had the situations where at the drop of a hat, one of us has gotten in a car
Yeah.
and driven over for the day, whether
Or,
it's inspection related, family related, whatever related.
or a $75 train ride up to Orlando.
There you go.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll see it. We'll see you in Orlando in February too.
Yes,
Yeah.
I'm very much looking forward. I want to thank both of you. I mean, this is being managing directors or managing partners, or however you want to, just entrepreneurs taking time away from your business is not an easy thing to do. And I appreciate both of you. I've appreciated our friendships, but I appreciate that you're willing to share these experiences with other members in our audience. And so for that, I thank you both.
Well, thank you for the opportunity.
Absolutely.
My
Thank you
absolute
for your
pleasure.
knowledge.
And until next time, this has been Building Your Business with the CCPIA.